Trump was flying home from Beijing when he said the words that Taipei has been dreading for months. A reporter asked him about the $11 billion arms package for Taiwan that his own administration approved in December 2025. The package, that includes HIMARS rocket systems, Howitzers, Javelin anti-tank missiles, and Anduril kamikaze drones. The package that Taiwan's parliament spent months fighting over to appropriate the $25 billion needed to actually pay for it. The package that represents Taiwan's most significant military upgrade in years. And Trump said, "I will make a determination. I'll be making decisions, but I think the last thing we need right now is a war that's 9,500 miles away." 9,500 miles away. Taiwan is 9,500 miles from Washington, and the President of the United States just used the distance between two cities as his public explanation for why he has not delivered the weapons his own administration approved 7 months ago for an ally that China has been threatening with increasing military intensity for years. And then he added something that made the situation even clearer. He said that when Xi Jinping raised his concerns about Taiwan during their meetings in Beijing, Trump said, "I heard him out. I didn't make a comment." The President of the United States heard China's complaints about selling weapons to America's democratic ally and said nothing back. No defense of Taiwan, no reaffirmation of commitment, no pushback. He heard him out and made no comment. And now the $11 billion arms package sits in a bureaucratic limbo that is starting to look less like a delay and more like a quiet surrender. Here's the angle that makes this story the most strategically alarming development to come out of the Beijing summit. The Six Assurances. Most people have never heard of them, but every serious Taiwan analyst and every diplomat who has worked on cross-strait relations for the past 4 decades knows exactly what they are. The Six Assurances are a set of non-binding policy principles formulated in 1982 under President Ronald Reagan that have helped guide American policy on Taiwan for 44 years. They were established to reassure Taipei that the United States would not abandon its commitment to Taiwan's security, even as Washington maintained its one China policy. One of those Six Assurances, one of the fundamental promises Reagan made to Taiwan, and that every subsequent American president upheld, is that the United States will not consult with China about arms sales to Taiwan, will not ask Beijing's permission, will not factor China's preferences into the decision of what weapons to sell to a democratic partner that faces a genuine military threat across the strait. That assurance has been the bedrock of Taiwan's confidence that American arms sales are based on Taiwan's defense needs, not on what Beijing will tolerate. And Trump just violated it, publicly, on Air Force One, by saying he heard out Xi Jinping's concerns about Taiwan arms sales during their bilateral meetings in Beijing. That single sentence, "I heard him out," signals that Beijing's concerns were part of the conversation about a decision that Reagan's assurances said Beijing should have no role in. And the most alarming part is that Trump apparently does not realize what he just said, or he realizes it and does not care. Either possibility is terrifying for the 23 million people who live on that island. To understand the full weight of what is happening with Taiwan's arms package, you need to understand the complete timeline of how this situation developed. In May 2025, two U.S. officials told reporters that the Trump administration planned to increase weapons sales to Taiwan to levels exceeding Trump's own first term. The first term approved approximately $18.3 billion in arms for Taiwan. The Biden administration approved $8.4 billion. The signal was clear. Trump's second term was going to be even more committed to Taiwan's defense than his first. In December 2025, the Trump administration authorized an $11.1 billion weapons package for Taiwan. HIMARS rocket systems, M109A7 self-propelled Howitzers, Javelin and TOW anti-armor missiles, Altius kamikaze drones from the military technology company Anduril. Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called it the second arms sale to Taiwan announced during the Trump administration's second term, once again demonstrating the U.S.'s firm commitment to Taiwan's security. And Taiwan's parliament spent months fighting bitterly over how to fund it. The appropriation battle was brutal. Taiwan's opposition-controlled legislature tried to cut defense spending. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te pushed back hard. And finally, in early May 2026, Taiwan's parliament approved $25 billion to fund both the $11 billion package from December and a separate $14 billion package approved in January. Taiwan did everything right. Taiwan jumped through every political hoop. Taiwan appropriated the money. And now, Trump is flying home from Beijing saying he is not sure he wants to send the weapons because he does not want a war 9,500 miles away. And then there is the February call. Axios reported that the $11 billion December 2025 arms package reportedly led Xi Jinping to warn Trump against further arms deliveries to Taiwan in a phone call in February 2026. Think about that timeline. Trump approves $11 billion in arms for Taiwan in December 2025. Xi calls Trump in February 2026 and warns him against sending more weapons. And then, in May 2026, Trump flies to Beijing, does not formally notify Congress about either the $11 billion or the $14 billion package, sits across from Xi for 2 days of meetings, hears out Xi's concerns about Taiwan, and flies home saying, "I think the last thing we need right now is a war 9,500 miles away." The trajectory from firm commitment in December to "I heard him out" in May runs directly through a February phone call where Xi warned Trump and Trump apparently listened. That is not a coincidence. That is a diplomatic sequence. Xi told Trump in February not to send weapons. Trump visited Beijing in May after delaying the notification. Trump flew home saying he has not decided. That is a leader who received a warning and is behaving accordingly. The question for Taiwan is not whether Trump will ultimately send the weapons. The question is what price China extracted for Trump's continued consideration of sending them, and what that price means for the decades of American commitment to Taiwan's security that Reagan encoded in the Six Assurances. The congressional reaction to Trump's Taiwan statements has been swift and bipartisan. Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who has been one of the most hawkish voices on Taiwan in the entire Senate, published a direct response. He said, Taiwan arms sales should be an easy decision for Trump. Democratic and Republican lawmakers who have supported Taiwan's efforts to build up its military defenses were united in their concern. We have to support Taiwan, a senior senator told reporters. The bipartisan consensus on Taiwan's defense, which has been one of the most consistent features of American foreign policy across both parties for decades, is looking at a president who just told reporters on Air Force One that a war 9,500 miles away is the last thing he needs right now. What those lawmakers understand that Trump appears not to is this. The question of whether to sell Taiwan $11 billion in defensive weapons is not primarily about preventing a war 9,500 miles away. It is about maintaining the credibility of American security commitments that prevent that war from happening in the first place. Deterrence works by making Beijing calculate that an attack on Taiwan would trigger an American response. The moment Beijing calculates that American commitment is conditional, that it depends on Trump's diplomatic needs of the week, the deterrence calculation changes. And deterrence that has changed is deterrence that has weakened. And weakened deterrence is what makes the war 9,500 miles away more likely, not less. Now let us talk about exactly what was in these arms packages that Trump is now reconsidering, because the specifics matter enormously for understanding what Taiwan would lose if the packages are further delayed or quietly shelved. The December 2025 $11 billion package included HIMARS, the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, that became famous for its devastating effectiveness in the Ukraine war. HIMARS can fire precision-guided rockets with a range of up to 300 kilometers. It is exactly the kind of long-range precision weapon that Taiwan would need to deter or defend against a Chinese amphibious assault across the Taiwan Strait. The package also included M109A7 self-propelled howitzers, heavy artillery that can provide sustained fire support against landing forces, and Javelin and TOW anti-armor missiles, the same systems that proved devastatingly effective against Russian tanks in Ukraine. And Altius kamikaze drones from Anduril, autonomous loitering munitions that can hunt and destroy armored vehicles without a human pulling a trigger for each engagement. This is not a diplomatic package designed to signal solidarity. This is a military package designed to give Taiwan the ability to inflict catastrophic casualties on any force trying to cross the strait and land on Taiwan's beaches. Every month this package sits undelivered is a month Taiwan's defensive capability falls behind China's offensive capability. And China's military modernization is not pausing while Trump decides whether a war 9,500 miles away is the last thing he needs. The January 2026 $14 billion package adds another layer of urgency to this story. That package was approved by Congress. Taiwan appropriated the money. And it also cannot advance until Trump formally sends the notification. Two packages. $25 billion in combined defensive arms. Both approved. Both funded by Taiwan. Both sitting undelivered because Trump has not sent the required notifications to Congress. And both currently hostage to the diplomatic comfort of the Beijing summit. The CNN chief national security analyst published a direct assessment after the summit. Trump's failure to commit to the arms sales was a win for China. That is not a partisan opinion. That is a strategic assessment from a national security expert who covers these issues professionally. And it matches exactly what Beijing actually wanted from the summit. China did not need Trump to formally cancel the arms packages. China just needed Trump to delay them long enough that the message was received in Taipei, in Tokyo, in Seoul, and in every Asian capital that is watching whether American security commitments in the Indo-Pacific mean what they say they mean. Taiwan's response to Trump's statements has been carefully diplomatic, but clearly anxious. Taiwan's government noted publicly that Secretary of State Marco Rubio affirmed that U.S. policy on Taiwan is unchanged. That single word, unchanged, was the minimum reassurance Taipei was looking for. But unchanged policy and undelivered weapons are two different things. Taiwan can have all the policy affirmations in the world and still face a military capability gap if the weapons approved for its defense are sitting in American warehouses rather than in Taiwanese defensive positions. And the people of Taiwan understand this distinction with a clarity that comes from living 23 million strong under the threat of a military force across a 160-kilometer strait that has been conducting increasingly aggressive military exercises around the island for years. China flew record numbers of military aircraft into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone in 2025. China conducted unprecedented naval exercises around the island. China's People's Liberation Army publicly rehearsed blockade scenarios that mirror exactly what would happen in a military campaign to seize Taiwan. And into that environment, Trump is sending the message that he heard out Xi Jinping's concerns and has not made a decision about the weapons Taiwan's own parliament fought to fund. Now, the three scenarios for what happens next with this arms decision. The first scenario is Trump delivers and deterrence holds. In the next few days or weeks, Trump sends the formal congressional notification for both the $11 billion and $14 billion packages. Taiwan receives its HIMARS, its Howitzers, its Javelin missiles, and its kamikaze drones on schedule. Beijing protests loudly, but takes no military action because the calculus of deterrence holds. Taiwan's defensive capability increases measurably, and the message sent to every U.S. ally in the Indo-Pacific and beyond is that American security commitments survive even the pressure of a Beijing state dinner. This scenario requires Trump to make a decision that reverses the impression created by, "I heard him out." It requires him to demonstrate that hearing out Xi's concerns meant nothing for the ultimate policy outcome. It is possible. Trump has surprised analysts before by doing the thing everyone said he would not do. The second scenario is the packages are quietly shelved. The notification never comes. Trump manages the political consequences by keeping both options technically open, never formally canceling the packages, but never formally notifying Congress either. The weapons sit in legal limbo. Taiwan receives vague reassurances about American commitment, while the actual military hardware stays undelivered. Beijing reads the silence as a signal. Chinese military planning adjusts to the new assessment of American resolve. Taiwan's defense capability stagnates relative to China's advance, and the deterrence gap widens year by year until the military balance in the strait has shifted beyond what defensive weapons alone can address. This scenario does not require any single dramatic decision. It just requires continued inaction. And continued inaction is always the path of least diplomatic resistance. The third scenario is the Taiwan question becomes the next major crisis. Trump delivers the arms packages. China responds with unprecedented military exercises around Taiwan that go beyond anything in the historical record. A Chinese military aircraft crosses into Taiwan's airspace. A Chinese naval vessel confronts a U.S. Navy ship in the strait. An incident occurs that neither side planned, and neither side can easily de-escalate. And the war that is 9,500 miles away from Washington suddenly does not feel so far away anymore. This scenario is the one that Trump's language on Air Force One was designed to avoid. And it is the one that the weakening of deterrence makes more probable over time. I want to be completely clear about what I think is happening here. The $11 billion arms package Trump authorized in December 2025 and the $14 billion package approved in January 2026 are not diplomatic gestures. They are the material manifestation of a security commitment that has kept the Taiwan Strait at peace for decades. When Trump says he thinks the last thing America needs is a war 9,500 miles away, he is expressing exactly the sentiment that those weapons are designed to prevent. A war 9,500 miles away is the last thing anyone needs. But the way you prevent that war is by making the cost of starting it prohibitively high for the side that would have to initiate it. That is what deterrence means. And deterrence requires delivering on commitments when they are tested, not delaying them when the diplomatic weather is uncomfortable. Taiwan's parliament appropriated $25 billion to pay for weapons that America approved. America's Reagan-era Six Assurances say Beijing has no role in the decision about those weapons. And Trump flew home from Beijing saying he heard out Xi's concerns and has not made up his mind. The weapons are paid for. The legal authority exists. The strategic rationale is clear. The only thing missing is the president's decision. And that decision is now hostage to whatever Trump calculated in a garden stroll in Zhongnanhai among roses and 400-year-old trees. My question for you today is this. Do you believe Trump will ultimately deliver the Taiwan arms packages and prove that the Beijing summit changed nothing about American commitment to Taiwan's security? Or do you believe the delay and the heard him out language already signals that Xi Jinping extracted a real concession on Taiwan that we have not yet fully understood? Write your answer in the comments, because this is the most important question for Asian security in the next decade. And if this kind of deep analysis that goes inside the diplomatic language and tells you what the words actually mean for millions of real people living under real military threats is what you have been looking for, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The decision is coming in the next few days. And what Trump decides about $11 billion worth of weapons for Taiwan will tell us more about the real outcome of the Beijing summit than any communique ever could. See you in the next video.